everyone. Welcome to Be My Guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lir Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary. And my special guest here today is the gorgeous Patricia Kennelly, originally from New York, but now living in San Francisco. And Patricia's another one of my Irish dancing colleagues. She's an Irish dancing teacher and an adjudicator. Hello, Patricia. How are you?
Hello, Mary. I'm fine. And how are you?
Oh, sure. Do you know I'm grand? What can you do? We can just about get through this COVID-19 with our brains intact.
That's right. That's right. It certainly has made us focus a little differently on life.
Yeah. How has it affected you, Patricia, and your school? Has it had
I,
much of an effect?
oh, yes. So most definitely, yes. In the beginning, I was teaching through Coach's Eye. And so people were sending me videos, and then I was sending them back with corrections. And then I went to Zoom.
Yeah.
And I've been teaching on Zoom since. We're still in lockdown.
Now, do you find Zoom good? Because I said to Danny when I was interviewing him, I can hardly believe that, or no, Jimmy Smith, I can hardly believe the words are coming out of my mouth. I said, Jimmy, do you use Zoom? And he said, Jesus, no.
Well, I never thought I'd be using it either, Mary. I'm not much of a computer girl now, but I've learned, and I found, this little group was started, and I don't know if you've heard about it, but Michael Dillon, when this all
I'm
happened,
on it, yeah.
Yeah, he put up this site, and then Deirdre O'Mara kind of took it one step further, and she has a meeting every Saturday for teachers from that group, and it's on COGAL, it's on commission.
Really, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, and she has been that group has been fabulous. There's no egos. It's all about helping each other, and I personally really feel it was very, very valuable.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from my colleagues about how to continue with Zoom and even how to get more advanced and how to get the best out of Zoom. So
yeah,
I've been doing that, and I even took it so far. We had a class fesh on Zoom. So that
Did you?
Yeah. And I'm doing a dance camp on Zoom next week.
Wow, you're very adventurous.
Yeah.
I think you're probably the most adventurous of everyone that I've interviewed so far. I think Jimmy Smith certainly doesn't use it at all.
No.
I can't imagine Danny uses it, Danny Doherty.
No, I wouldn't say so.
Michael Dillon certainly does. And
yes.
So, I don't think Patsy McLaughlin uses it either. But, Terry and Philip, Terry was saying, as somebody who likes to produce and to keep moving with things, it's not so good for him. But Philip, who likes drilling, thinks it's amazing.
Now, it's funny because I found with my students, the way I say steps, they've learned what each movement has a name and each movement has a rhythm, and I say it in rhythm and I say the name.
I do too.
So, so when I'm teaching them, even on Zoom, like I taught slow hornpipes to people who were learning them for the first time and slow jigs. I mean, I feel like I've been very successful on Zoom. And I think part of that too is, I was telling the parents this, I said, your children are progressing so quickly on Zoom.
Yeah.
I think it's because they don't have other things. They don't have soccer. They don't have, any kind of sports, no after school activities. So they're focusing on their dancing.
That's it. As well as that, you're face to face with them, and sometimes you can teach them things with your hands and you don't have to rely, and you can do the steps in your hands for them, like we did years ago. We did everything in our fingers, and you can get back to doing that, but you can also focus on their feet more, and then
very much so. Yes.
that, especially for drilling. But you're a musician also.
I am, Mary, yes.
So you came to it from every angle.
I was very fortunate. When I was a little girl, there was a musician by the name of Joe Cooley from County Galway, and he moved to San Francisco. And he was a wonderful musician. I thought I'd never heard anything like it. When I heard him play, I thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever heard. And in fact, I was one night, there's a funny story. He was playing at our house. We often had dancing people or musicians in our house, singers. We had kind of a lively house, you might say, and a very open door, you know.
An Irish house.
Very much so. And so he was playing one night, and it was late, and I was in bed, and I kept creeping out of bed, and I kept sitting by the kitchen door listening to him. And my mother would come out, and she'd say, "Go back to bed. You have school tomorrow." No, 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 you know. And so I did it a couple of times. And finally he said, "Sure, she loves the music, Maureen, my mother's name. You know, why don't you let her come in and listen? If she likes it, isn't that a good thing?" So I went in, and my mother warned me to be quiet, and I did, and stayed quiet. But I listened, and I loved it. And I asked him at some point, would he teach me? And he had never taught anyone. And so he thought about it, and he said, yes, I will. And we became very close and really good friends, and, you know, kind of another father image in a way.
Yeah. That's the image I had in my head of him being another father figure to you.
Yeah. He was a very kind and very decent man, and I learned a lot from him other than playing as well. He was just a very interesting man.
Yeah. How did you get involved in Irish dancing in the beginning? I presume it was obvious, it was a natural progression for an Irish American child that everybody automatically is sent to Irish dancing if they're a girl, even boys, you know, just sent off to Irish dancing. Was that the way it was for you?
Different. Well, no, my father was from Kerry, from North Kerry, and his teacher was Jerry Mulnix, or Jeremiah Mulno. And my mother was from San Francisco, and her teacher was Bill and Ann Healy, but two of them. So my mother went to New York. She had heard that there was a lot of great music, and she loved traditional music. So she heard there was a lot going on in the Irish circles in New York, and she moved to New York, and her job took her there. And my father immigrated to Bronx as well.
Okay.
And my dad thought he was finished with dancing, and he was in a dance hall, and somebody asked him to get up and do a step, and he did. And his teacher saw him, his New York teacher saw him, and that was Professor McKenna. And he was a ferryman, you know.
Yeah.
So he asked him to come to class, and my father went to his class and also helped him teach, and, you know, gave some of the steps that he had from Jerry Mulnix. And so my mother and father met at Irish dancing class in New York at Professor McKenna's class. And then, you know, the rest is kind of history.
Patsy McLaughlin was talking about Professor McKenna.
Yes, well, then she moved to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And they'd had me in New York. I, you know, was born in New York. They married, and of course, and then we moved to San Francisco. And then they started an Irish dancing school in San Francisco.
Wow.
And when I was really small, I could see all the kids. My father built a studio under our home for dancing. And so I could see all the kids coming and going and laughing and having such a good time with my parents. And I said, you know, I want to go. And my mother said, no, you're too small. Oh, well, no, I'm not too small. I want to go, you know, and then, no, you're too small. So finally, my mom thought it was the appropriate time, and I started, and I loved it from the very first lesson.
You know, it's amazing when you're talking like that, Patricia, about your parents and how the children loved it. It must have also given you a great sense of appreciation as well for your parents, because you could see the joy they were bringing to other children, and it almost made them it made them cool in your eyes. You know, as a child, they were doing something that other children your age wanted to be around.
I always felt I was so lucky, so fortunate to have the life that I had. I was exposed to some of the top musicians in the world at that time. I met wonderful dancing masters that, you know, came to our home, and I listened. You know, I really did. Even as a small child, I enjoyed it. Even going to meetings, my mother and father would leave us outside. They would go into the meeting.
Yeah.
And Pat Hall would be sitting with me. You know, her mother would be in the meeting.
Yeah.
And it was so funny then. I mean, she's very interested now, but then she had no interest. And I used to say to her, I want to listen. Let's listen, you know. I'd want to listen at the door and hear what they were saying.
They call that earwigging here in our in Ireland.
Exactly.
Earwigging.
I mean, I was only 10, but you know, it was all learning too. I think no harm. Like it makes you aware
It
of
does.
what was important, and
But
uh,
it's true. I mean, I was an only child, and my mother was the type of a person that loved storytelling, and
uh,
she was an only child, and she had listened to all the stories about characters in our neighborhood growing up, and anyone that wanted to know anything or recall something or somebody would come to Mammy. They'd sit down, they'd be
oh,
chatting about people they'd never even known, people who had died long before they were even born, but the stories had continued from generation to generation about these people. And Mum was that type of a person that liked listening to people's stories. And so I can understand how you were totally engrossed in that lifestyle.
and do you know, Mary? I was listening to Jimmy Smith from Kerry. I was
Yeah,
listening to his interview with you, and so many things were so similar in the way we teach or our approach. You know,
yeah,
it really said to me like how much is handed down. Like, well, even steps he did. I had never seen the video of him or you know the pieces that he had done, the ceremonic steps, and I know some of those steps from my father. We grew up in the very beginning where my parents started teaching. We were very, you know, there wasn't much connection with people going to Ireland. Once they left, and so they brought with them what they brought with them. And so we learned a lot of traditional steps to start off with. My initial, you know, learning was very, very traditional, deep in
yeah,
tradition. And
yeah,
then my
yeah.
father went with the times as things started to, people started to
You
move and
have to
travel
go
more.
with the times, but you can't.
Yeah,
It's like everything else. Bring the past with you, and keep
yes,
the best of the past. Bring the foundation with you, and
yes, I believe
keep
in that.
building on that foundation. But don't dismantle the foundation, because the rest of it will fall apart.
I
Do you know?
totally agree with that. I think it's very important. I still teach traditional hornpipes that I learned from my dad.
Yeah.
I still teach
Mm.
traditional jigs. I think they're important. I think they're important for footwork too, just to learn, you
They
know,
are.
that. Yeah.
And a lot of the steps, if you look at my favorite traditional set was the Garden of Daisies, because
Yes.
it's got lots of rocks and cross keys, and my job at Journey Work has cross keys at the end of it in it as well. But I liked the traditional cross keys and the rocks,
Oh, yes.
and I
Yes.
think that a lot of the steps were much harder to do than
Yes.
than if you can. What Jimmy has said was, I believe, is quite right. Once you actually can actually master or have some mastership of the traditional, you're going to find everything else comes easy.
I completely agree. It teaches solid rhythm. It teaches footwork. You know, there's definitely, you, I think it's a must that there has to be some, you know, we have to know where we came from to go forward.
And
You know?
you came up, absolutely. You always have to look at the past, in order you can't just ignore the past. And
Right.
you have to have, it's like building a house. You have to have a good foundation, and once you have that good foundation, everything else will just look fantastic. But did you uh, did you have much competition in your area in New York when you were growing up? Because I am astounded at the American dancers, I have to say, and I've said it before. You know, we had Irish dancing here. We always thought it was great, and in the UK. But within not a very long time, this chasm, say, that was there between the American dancers and the Irish, say, has just been bridged massively. And I mean, the standard in America is just. I was saying to you earlier, when I judged the Mid Atlantic qualifiers, the only qualifiers I judged over there. But it's one of these. Yeah, I was just astonished. And you go to the Worlds and the All Irelands, and you see the standard has just become so high. Do you attribute that to hard work, or this kind of, I suppose, ethos that people have in America of succeeding and winning all the time?
Well,
This
I was just going to
competition is
say,
kind of
Mary,
built into their ethos.
I was just going to say, we all love to win. I love to
Yeah,
win. I've, when I first started teaching, my goal was to hold my head up in my own region, or my own area, I should say, in the San Francisco area, Northern California area, amongst the teachers there. And I certainly went farther than I ever expected to go as far as competition and being successful. But that was never the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
For me, the competitions are a motivation to make you a better dancer.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Yes, it should be the motivation. Now we can see that children who don't compete don't progress as quickly. So I'm a big advocate of competition, because I think it does give them a little push, to go get better. The main thing is the actual dancing and the culture, the music. I think the music and the dancing go together. I wish, I'm finding that today there's a little bit of a disconnect with traditional Irish music and what's being played for dancing. And although I have the deepest respect for many of the musicians as artists,
I was going to ask you what you think of the contemporary music, the contemporary version of traditional Irish music, rather than the traditional.
I think there's a place for it, but I don't like seeing. I'm not hearing any
Rocky Roads to Dublin, or you don't hear a Rocky Road to Dublin ever in a long time now.
Sally Gardens, anything that's
Sally Gardens.
The best of time, and you don't hear it being played anymore, and it makes me very sad. I hope that's only a phase, and I hope that it will be realized to go back to our beautiful.
I love a lot of the music now. I love the D minor reel. I call it the D minor reel. And some of the hornpipes are just exquisite, and but yeah, there's room for including.
There's a place for progression. Yeah. There's also a place to keep our tradition. So I just don't want to see it get too far removed. I mean, also, I felt like what Jimmy said was so much of my own thinking. I felt also that, we used to be able to look at a dancer and we'd know exactly where they were from. You'd know, like in America.
That's what I was saying to Jimmy. You can see you can almost see with certain dancers a region that you should be able to see. When you see these programs on TV about reconstructing houses and maintaining some of the old and putting in some of the new to show where they've come from, show the story of that building. Well, you should be able to see the story, I think, of the dancer. You should be able to see the tradition of that they came from, the region they came from, if you like, the fact that they have a traditional basis to them, or
right. But at one point, Mary, you used to be able to look at a dancer and you'd know they were Kerry dancer, or you'd know they were from, wherever. Now you might be able to tell Munster. You might be able to see, like, well, yeah, that's kind of something that would go through Munster, and then that would also come through if somebody like myself, who was based, had a directly down, would see Munster style in my dances.
Yeah.
But I think it's getting more and more homogenized.
That's because you had the Jerry Molyneux type, I suppose, influence in your background, so you would have had that, if you like, that Munster ethos. I can see. I think the same applies with Ulster dancers. They very much have that style that you can identify.
So instead of being a specific place now, like Kerry or Cork, where you could have years ago you could spot a dancer from Cork different from someone from Kerry. Now it's more we've gotten a wider kind of range.
Yeah. We've got a kind of a homogenized range.
We do, and that's happening in music as well. And it's because people are sharing more. It's more. More, and with more availability to travel and to see.
That's it, and to be able to go on YouTube and be able to see Parade of Champions. And as Jimmy said, he watches the Parade of Champions and he says, "I like that, and I like this, and I like that." Now, did you hear him when he told the story about Danny when he was up at the World? And and they all are. And he was to the ground because that was the Kerry style, and Danny comes out with a click and he thought he was getting a seizure.
He thought he was having a fit. That was funny. That was very funny. Well, the first time we had some influence from Ireland in my class. When I first started, I knew that we were behind. I knew that was more happening. You know, I could see maybe somebody would come out on a cultist tour or something. So I could see that things were different. And the first person who kind of came into my class and put us up to date and was very generous and, you know, just a very giving, you know, beautiful dancer was I called him Mr. Nolan at the time, but Anthony
Tony,
Nolan.
he was my teacher. I started, I was
Oh,
with O'Rourke's, and then I went to, yeah, he's a lovely man.
Oh my goodness, he was so generous, and he really did everything he could to help. You know,
But he was a lovely
dancing.
teacher as well. He was
Wonderful.
he was one of these teachers who he always put you at ease. You know,
Yes.
he wasn't he didn't frighten you.
And then I had another
I was
influence
lucky
after
with my
him.
teachers. Yeah.
Yeah. After him, we had another influence that I had coming out to us for many years, and it was a whole different style. It was very different, but Matt Milady and Mary Duffy.
Did you have Matty Milady?
I did, and you know, I loved both of them. They were very
Great school, wasn't it?
very, very different. You know, Matt was kind of the softie, and Mary was more, you know.
I often wondered how the dynamic actually, or how what he was like. I've never actually spoken to somebody about what he was like in class, because I was speaking to Father Michael Johnston today, who was talking about Ted Kavanagh, and how Ted Kavanagh was terrifying inside in the class, and it didn't matter who you were. If you were a minute late, he stopped the entire class and would ask you, who the hell do you think you are coming in at this time? You're late. And it wouldn't matter who they were, you know, and he said he was so strict, but yet outside of dancing he was just lovely. But he demanded
Matt was
perfection.
lovely. The children loved him. And the children loved Mary too.
Yeah.
In a different way. They had a little bit of a fear of Mary. You know, she was tough, and she had expectations, she demanded them.
Yeah, and she got the results.
Absolutely, yes.
She got the results.
Yeah, so they were a good combination for me, because I found it was the softness and also the, you know, the
good cop, bad cop.
Yes, and of course, you know, Mary's a lovely person, and not to paint her as anything.
Oh God, no! But I needed. I was saying it to Michael today. He told me call him Michael. I find it hard calling him Michael when he was wearing the collar. But I was saying it to him. I needed a cross teacher all my life, because if they were any way soft at all with me, I would just take advantage, and I'd do nothing. The same in school. I'd do no homework, nothing. But if I was sufficiently afraid of the nun, I would. So I needed somebody on my back.
Yes. Well, again, I go back to what Jimmy said about my father when he taught. He would stay with the dancer if they looked interested and they were, you know, showing potential to good. He would stay with them until they got whatever it was they got. I think that his pupil interviewed him on that video and said that you would stay, you know, and I'm like that as well. I teach very much like that. I will stay with someone if they look like they're enjoying it and they're progressing and we're moving forward. I'll stay with them for as long as I could stay till midnight. You know, I love it so much.
And isn't it hard when you have a very talented child and you have to have everything, I think, inside in a class. You have to have a talented child who works hard, who's got parents who are interested and willing to send their child to everything that they can possibly send them to, and you have to have it. It has to tick all the boxes to get that champion, because sometimes you can have a wonderful child in your class and they're just not putting in the hard work. Then you can have another child who doesn't have the natural talent but works really, really hard inside in the class, and you're saying to yourself, if you could only put the two of them together, you'd have the perfect child, the perfect dancer.
My mother said to me, you can't care more than they do, and it'll only break your heart if you do. So if you're not giving it
so true,
you know, go as far as, maybe that's what they enjoy, maybe that's as far as they want to go with this, and let them have their own experience, take their own journey.
Soul destroying though, Patricia, when you see a really talented child.
Oh, I have one now, and they haven't come on Zoom. I don't know what the reason is, but it's a fella, it's a boy, and I've always loved teaching boys. I don't know
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
know
yeah,
that,
yeah,
Mary.
yeah,
I've
yeah, yeah,
had it
yeah, 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 yeah,
many
yeah.
years, going back. I love teaching boys, and maybe that's again something, like I know
Where do
Jimmy's
you
had
think
great.
that came from?
Well, Jimmy's had great success with boys,
He's
and
had
I've had
huge,
success with
yeah,
boys as well. And I don't know, maybe it's that Kerry style that,
yeah.
it's just very comes through and it's very appealing. I don't
Is it,
know. I
yeah,
know
is it because of the, back again to the fact of the traditional Mulno, Kerry
one of my really
influence?
good boys many years ago, he won the All Ireland, and I was looking at him before he went, and I almost started to cry because I realized he looked like my father dancing. And I thought he's got the little ankle work, he's got the footwork, he he's so much, and he had to do a traditional set. It was a younger it was the All Ireland, but it was a younger competition, and I was so pleased with him, and also like just I don't know,
Yeah,
just that style was coming through, and he just reminded me of my father. So I don't know,
yeah.
maybe there's something to the style that's appealing across the board. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a smooth style. It's a smooth, ultra traditional style,
Very
but
rhythmic too.
very
So there's
rhythmic,
lots of
all
rhythm.
to the ground, full of rhythm. And you can
Mhm.
see that in
Yeah.
David Gainey. As much
Oh
as David
yes.
does all the flash and does all the tricks and the flicks and the clicks,
Yes.
at his very core, it's all about rhythm.
That's right.
And a lot of it is down to the ground. If you notice, there's, whereas yes, he will do the clicks and that, but you can see the tradition, you can see this Jimmy
Oh,
Smith
definitely.
style coming through him. It
Most
just oozes.
definitely.
And the fact that he's gone back to dancing on a little square is almost back to the roots of dancing, the shanos,
I
which is
think this
nice, and Jimmy
pandemic
loves
is,
that. Jimmy
I
loves the
think,
fact that he's gone back to what
oh
looks like
yes. Why wouldn't he have?
Molyneux, and rather than that, he's taken the best of what he is as a competition dancer and brought it
This,
back to its core.
this pandemic, I think, will change dancing. I think you will see more rhythm. I think, more
Hopefully, better feet
in the, yes,
in everyone.
in the, in just the last little while, I found the focus was a little bit more on, super crossing and very, everything perfect, every
Do you
foot
like
placement.
the super crossing?
I'm not a huge fan of it. A little bit, it's
Yeah,
okay to a point. I, I like a little more natural.
yeah,
So I don't think you can do a lot when I realized that myself when I kept getting the comment for a few feshes. People were saying, need more cross, need more cross. So I thought, and I realized it wasn't how I was teaching, it was what I was teaching.
yeah,
And I was doing more rhythm, and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
very
yeah.
difficult when you were doing more difficult pieces to have that look.
Bring
So
the leg back, to bring the
yeah, so
foot
you have to
back, because
actually
you're not given
simplify.
enough time. You're
You
not
have to
given
actually
enough.
simplify what you're doing to make it clean, and then clean enough to be able to do that. So I find that the dancing has been more simple but more
Pared back.
perfect. Yeah. And I just would like to see, like, I'm happy to see a little more rhythm coming in, maybe to jigs and hornpipes. I mean, people were going all out on sets, but jigs and hornpipes were kind of becoming a little bit kind of even, so it'd be nice to see
Yeah,
some.
yeah,
Yeah.
safe.
Yes.
Yeah,
I would. Yes.
I actually do think that the fact that people are using Zoom more, that they're going to be maybe focusing, as you said, on all the on good, getting the basics right.
Well, we
So
can't
you know,
travel.
you know,
You can't travel the
can't
floor.
travel.
So
And that's
so
what
it's a
Terry
good thing.
doesn't like. Terry was saying to me that the fact that you can't travel, and the fact,
Right.
because he's not into drilling, whereas Philip into drilling. So that's
Well, I'm more in
fantastic for
between the two
Philip.
of them. I don't really particularly care for drilling. That to me is homework. You do that at home. I'll do a little bit, but I don't
And
want to
you're
do the
like
same movement.
you're like Terry. He said he gets bored once they learn the step.
Yeah.
He's that's gone. Now Jimmy would be a driller. Tony Tyrrell, Lord rest him. Tony was a driller. I would be a driller at heart. I would stay with a child forever, until they actually get it right.
Yeah.
And not very good at making up step. I don't have the uh, patience to make up steps. I know what's right and I know what's wrong, and I know if I look at a child doing something and I can say, no, that doesn't suit you, I'd rather make it simple for you
Yes.
and get it right than try to do something that doesn't suit you, because not every child can do everything. There's
But Mary,
certain
don't you find too that in this field like that we're in, I've always felt you have friends all over the world, and that's something that I find, oh, I just love the fact that, like you were talking about Father Michael, I wouldn't have met Father Michael, only we were judging together at the Mid-Atlantic Oireachtas, and we hit it off so beautifully, and we became great friends, and I invited him to judge my fetch in San Francisco.
Yeah, he's a gentleman.
Yeah. So, I mean, somebody like Father Michael, I brought Jimmy Smith out to adjudicate. And of course, the crack was unbelievable. And I brought him to a casino, and and Darren McGuire was also one of the other adjudicators. So Darren McGuire, myself, and Jimmy Smith went to this casino. Well, you can imagine now with that group. And
I can just picture Jimmy in a casino.
Fun, and Jimmy made more money. He said, "This is great crack. I made more money at the casino than I did adjudicating."
Did you hear him when he talked about the woman coming into the class and she only giving him half his money?
Yes.
Well, I'll give you the full amount when she can do it to music.
I've had people, that was funny. I've had people do the strangest things to me over the years.
So a typical Irish solution to an Irish problem, he said, do it there to the music. The child hadn't a clue.
Yes.
But he got his full amount of money.
Gets away.
Well, what
were you saying? Something my father would do. Yeah, he was funny.
What were you saying there?
I had things over the years too, people doing the strangest things, maybe shorting you only a few dollars. It was the same person every time, and I'd be too, I couldn't ask somebody for,
no, nor me.
I couldn't do it.
I often went the whole summer without somebody's money, but I knew they'd give it to me eventually, and I'd get it in September.
Yeah, sometimes I never did it, but I mean, there were children I looked after over the years.
Yeah, some I didn't get it either. Yeah, but
and I know every teacher probably is the exact same. Kids you buy costumes for, or shoes, or someone you see that really can't afford something, and you look after them over the years. And
yeah, I've done that too.
I wouldn't regret it for a second, though.
No, because my mother always said to me, Lord rest her, if you ever have a child in your class who in your heart and soul can't afford but is good, or even if they're not good, if they love it and they can't afford it, do not charge them. And if you have to get them their costume, get it. I never realized it was going to be my first pupil, but these are I wouldn't regret it either. Like you, I wouldn't regret it for a minute.
And then you see the joy too in other people, like if they take up teaching. I have a few dancers, both male and female, that have gone on to become teachers, and I think there's a great thrill in that too, knowing that what you taught is going to go forward. And I find
most children are like children to you. You become a surrogate mother.
Yes, well, you certainly become close. You certainly have a closeness if they allow it. If they let you go the full, start to finish, there's an amazing closeness.
Yeah, if they stay with you. But June Deegan was saying to me, I saw one photograph of the child and June with her arms wrapped around her. And I said it to her, I said, isn't it amazing how the child would come to you first before, and she said, I have them told, before you ever go near your mother, when you come off a stage, come straight to me and I'll tell you whether you were good or bad. She'd always say to them, you were fabulous, darling. June.
Mine can tell by my face. They say, oh, we know by looking at you. We don't have to hear it. We know what you thought.
How have you
expressive?
How have you do you think, I'm going to ask you because I'm asking everybody, and it came out of Niall O'Leary's question. What do you think of the open platform? the idea of open platform?
I was fortunate enough in my day that, well, first, we didn't belong to any organization except our own teachers organization locally. So we had adjudicators come. Rory O'Connor judged me, and, we
Rory
had teachers
O'Connor,
from,
yeah.
different organizations adjudicating, and had some great, wonderful, I have some great stories. There was one judge that came out. He was in Los Angeles, and I used to go to the fesh early with my parents, obviously, and I would, walk around, and I'd go all day. I'd be having all day at the fesh. You didn't go for one specific time. You went for the whole day.
It's all encompassing. It's all it's
the
just
adjudicator saw
obsessive.
me and called me over from the table. He said, "Little girl," and I was small at the time. And I walked over to the table, and he said, and now this would never happen today, Mary, but he said, "You know how to make a hot toddy?" I said, "Yes, I do." I was thrilled with myself. And he said, "Good girl, go make one for me." So I went, and we were at this place called the Brothers of St. Patrick, and that's where the fesh was being held. And it was an outdoor and indoor fesh. And so I knew where the kitchen was. I knew how to go about my business. So I went in.
How old were you?
Oh, I was young. I was definitely young. Maybe 11.
You started early filling.
I did. So I went in and made him a hot toddy, and I put it in a styrofoam cup. So I brought it to him. I was so proud of myself, and there were other people around him, but I thought, it's still hot. I have to give it to him. So I said to him, "Mr." and I said his name. "Here's your coffee that you were asking for." And he said, "Coffee?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, your coffee that you asked for." And he looked and he winked at me, and he said, "Oh, good girl, thank you so much." And the next thing I knew,
how were the results that day?
"Bring me another one in a few minutes, or in a little while." And I said, "Oh, of course." So I brought it. I was bringing him his coffee, and then I got up to dance. Big smile from the adjudicator, and, well, you can probably figure out I didn't do too badly that day.
Bribing the judge with alcohol.
But I also, it was the teacher's daughter thing, you teach how to keep things on the down low, as they say. And I think when I think back of the experiences I had with people, Mr. Brendan DeGlynn came to our home, and he stayed at our house.
I keep on saying it every time his name comes up. I just loved Brendan DeGlynn.
He gave me my first championship.
Every time I came in front of Brendan DeGlynn, I won. And I still love when I'd see him there.
I took Brendan shopping.
He was exotic as well, though, with the coat over his shoulders.
He was very unique person, and I very much liked him. And I think my mother might have been having a baby. I think she was in the late stages of pregnancy, and I think she said to me, "Would you take Mr. Glenn? He'd like to go shopping, and I can't do the walking. Can you go bring him downtown and take him shopping?" And so I took Mr. Glenn shopping and had a whole day out, and him to lunch, and and I was a very young child. I was 12 years old when I did that. So I'm just saying, experience.
They put you to work very young, Patricia.
It wasn't work, Mary. It wasn't work. It wasn't work. It was a pleasure, and helping in the class. I always loved. When somebody was having trouble, I'd say to my father and mother, "I'll take her outside." We had a little area outside where you could practice, and I'd say, "I'll take her, Mom." I just loved it. I always did love it.
You just grew up completely immersed in the culture. Do you think, Patricia, that being Irish American makes people almost more Irish than the Irish themselves? The people who are actually, I'm English born. My father is English. My mother was very Irish. But I look at Irish Americans, and I think Irish Americans or the Irish who moved abroad become almost more Irish than we take things for granted here in this country.
That at all. I think that it kind of makes me, if I have friends that are Irish American, and when they're asked, what their heritage is, they just say Irish. And I don't, I've had little words with people over that. I'm American. I was born American.
Yeah.
And, I have.
You don't identify as Irish American?
I do. I don't think I'm more Irish than Irish people themselves. I wasn't born there. I didn't grow up in Ireland.
No, I think what I'm trying to say is that when people leave this country and they go abroad,
Oh,
they embrace our culture far more than we do ourselves. We take it for granted. There's so
but
many
Mary, there's a
youngsters in
good
this
reason.
country who just will not go to dancing, to Irish dancing, and it's on their
But there's a good
doorsteps.
reason, Mary.
Yeah,
When they immigrate, that's a way, especially for mothers in the past, when they would move out here, the husband would go out to work, and a lot of the women either worked or stayed at home with the children. It was a way of socializing too. You would
that's
bring your
that.
child to Irish dancing
Yeah,
class, and you'd meet other women that were Irish,
yeah.
and you'd have a little social set then, and it was a safe and very, it was
There
it was
was
a
a
good
sense of
group,
home
a sense
about
of
it.
home.
You could, but
Absolutely.
that's actually what I'm trying to say. Did you feel that? Did do you think that Irish people who have left the shores of Ireland go over, crave that sense of? I know it happened with my mother. She absolutely could not stay in England. She loved the English people. She said were lovely. They were very tolerant, but the rain didn't fall the same. The clothes didn't dry the same, she said, as they would in Ireland. People, when she saluted people on her in her way to
Yes.
town, they looked at her as if she had four, like, who is this woman saluting me? And
Yeah,
yet here in Ireland, everyone salutes each other. So
that's right.
it was, if she had had something like an Irish club near her that she could have gone to every day, I think she would have
Oh, yeah.
settled in England much quicker than she did. And she didn't settle at all. She stayed 5 years, and that was it. And I don't think she gave it a chance because there was no one near us, that an Irish club or an
Right.
Irish community where she could feel she was talking to somebody that knew
Yes.
her knew her culture.
Yes, I feel
You know?
that way. I mean, I feel that the mothers and fathers that came out, there's a definite camaraderie when they meet each other, their friendships form, and they're lifelong friendships. And their children form friendships, and their
Yeah,
lifelong friendships. And when people are getting married and they've been in my class for a long time, girls that they ask to be in the wedding,
yeah.
their dancing friends, not their school friends.
I know,
They've
it's
gone to school
amazing,
maybe
isn't
for
it?
12 years with. It's their dancing friends that they ask to be because they've gone through so many. And I was saying that too when I was sent you a few pictures, but I see you put up some different ones.
No, I'll be putting your ones up as well.
Oh, well, I was going to say, some of the things I looked at, like, oh, I don't know, like just, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but
Some of the
just
photos that you sent to me.
yeah, they brought back so many memories. That's one thing about being at home too, is that you get to look at all the photographs and videos, and I organized everything, and I know where everything is now, and it's so nice. I feel so happy to have had that time to do it.
Yeah, I
But
think
you look back
photographs are
on
very
even
important.
the opportunities I was given, like being a little girl from what we called the Mission District. It's now called Castro, but I grew up in San Francisco, and it was the area I grew up in was changing. It used to be an Irish kind of hub for people, and it was starting to change, but my father wouldn't move because he loved the weather there. He said, nope,
Yeah.
I'm not going out to those avenues, it's too cold. So we stayed in the Mission. And for this little girl in the Mission, kind of, I mean, I had such opportunities. I toured with the Chieftains, Mary, as a
Did you?
dancer myself. I did for over
Is
10
that how you
years.
got to know Michael Flatley
No,
before he became Michael Flatley?
no,
If you
he
know what I
wasn't
mean.
even with the Chieftains when I met Michael when I was 19. He was 18.
Yeah.
And he came to San Francisco with Seamus Cooley and Liz Carroll, great fiddle player, James Keane or Jimmy Keane, Bucks, piano accordion player. And they all came out together, Seamus Cooley, Mary Cooley, and they had kind of a little group together. And he was playing flute at the time, and he was dancing. And he came to our local pub. We're in our local pub, and I saw him dance, and I thought he was the greatest thing,
Since
I'd
sliced
seen.
bread.
Yeah, exactly. And I went up to him and introduced myself as a teacher in the area, and I didn't have my TCRG yet, but I was teaching full time at that point. I started when I was 18, so I introduced myself, and he said, I remember, never forget, he said, "Stay right there," and he ran to go the bar or something, and then he came straight back with 2 drinks, and he said, "Sit down." we're going to have a chat. It's so good to meet you. And we were lifelong friends after that.
He
And his
seems
family.
incredibly, I've never met him. He always seems very charismatic.
You know, Mary, I think Michael gets a funny rap too, because he's one of the kindest,
That's
most
what I mean.
generous
He's
people.
just, he just seems to have so much charisma and so
When
much charm.
When my father passed, he was the first person to call me.
Yeah.
And he said, "Is there anything I can do? Do you need anything? Will I fly to you?" Like, he was just, you know, such a good friend. And I think the persona that he has as an entertainer, that's something he had to create for self-preservation, maybe, or just as an entertainer.
As a showman.
As a showman. You know, he's actually quite a very quiet man, and a very thoughtful, very
he's a very intelligent. He's a very intelligent, very intelligent. And I mean, he's somebody that strikes me as being an overachiever, somebody who sets his mind to something and won't settle for half measures. He has
I used to go to Chicago, and I would stay in his home with his family.
Yeah.
And he would go out early in the morning to do plumbing with his father, and he would then, I mean, I barely saw him. I was spending more time with his mom than, you know, with my friend. But and then he'd go to some other kind of dance class, and he was learning flamenco, and he was always working on bettering.
I can understand that. I can understand that mentality, except I haven't succeeded.
Oh, you have, Mary.
I haven't. I've just done lots of things, but you know, I mean, it's all just a smoke screen. You know, sometimes you think I suffer from this. What they call it? It's a kind of a what's the phrase they use? Where you think somebody's going to eventually find me out in everything I've ever done. You know, you do something, and lots of people I know suffer from that, the fraud symptom or syndrome, where you think eventually now they're going to find out that I'm actually not. And I look at Michael Flatley and I think, God, do you know, I can understand that drive to succeed, that drive to do when you're doing something. Don't do it by halves. Don't do it at all if you're not going to do it right. I can understand his mentality, and that's why I have huge admiration for him. Except
his father used to say, like, I remember him saying at the dinner table, his father said something like, Mickey is going to be a millionaire. There's no question about it. My Mickey's going to be a millionaire. Like, I think he really had it. He had the support of two very loving, two very generous, giving parents. And all his family they're all, you know, one of his sisters, Toma, is still a very good friend of mine. Thomasini, yes. Toma is a great friend of mine, and we keep in contact. And we're like chalk and cheese. We're opposites. There's something in her heart that I just love the way she is, and
I don't know
the whole family's the whole family is like that. Annie, Liza, I don't know Pat, I don't know the brother Pat, but I know the others, and they're all just lovely people. You know, this good, but characters too, funny, sense of humor, and you know, smart. Yeah. Successful.
Yeah, but I mean, he's just one of these life's achievers, you know. I mean, Golden Gloves boxing champion, champion flautist, businessman extraordinary, dancer equally extraordinary. He's just I think he's just one of these people who just, he works really, you can see he works really hard, but he also achieves. Some people just could work forever and they just
that's right.
We just plod along. But yeah, I have huge admiration for him and for what he's done for Irish dancing, because he put it, we all knew, Patricia, how good it was. We all knew, we all loved Irish dancing.
Yes.
It was my life's breath. I mean, as an only child, it was my way of meeting people my own age. England, they were all retired people. I was the only child in the neighborhood. Came to Ireland, and there were lots of children, but none of them, I think one did Irish dancing, and the rest of them didn't bother. And it was the only thing I wanted, was Irish dancing. But he brought it into a completely different sphere altogether. He made it completely international.
when I would tell people, well, first of all, when I told my father that I was going to teach full time, oh, he just, he thought, no, 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 that's something you do as a hobby, and you have your job, um, prior to doing that in the evening. And I said, no, Dad, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it my job. I'm going to make it my work.
Career.
And yeah, my career. And I did, but I don't know. I never had the big thinking, like that. Like I felt like I'm a content person, and maybe
Yeah.
there's a beauty in that too. Like I'm happy.
Yeah, you seem a very content person, Patricia.
My father said to me one time when I was teaching, he said, there'll always be somebody better than you, and there'll always be somebody behind you. Be as good as you can be and be happy. And I thought that was what great words. I think back to them and I think that be happy. There's a lot to be said.
Yeah, I think we've got to accept in life, I suppose, that no matter how hard you try, or no matter how hard you want something or want to be successful at something, the best you might succeed in half the time is being really good. Whereas there's somebody always going to come along who's going to be great.
I mean, I think even, I definitely, even when you asked me to do this, Mary, I thought, how did I get in this company? Like the company of Danny Doherty and Terry and Philip and people who would be I think, much more well known than me. So, I'm very honored and very.
But you're very well respected, Patricia, and you are somebody, I mean, I've always hugely admired you from afar. You always seemed like somebody that was very calm and very, very placid, and yet, there, I don't think any Irish dancer and dancing teacher can be 100% placid, because to be successful, there has to be some kind of drive, some inner demons, some inner
oh yes,
whatever that's pushing you to succeed.
I can be tough. Yeah.
Because I look at people. I'm an observer. I'm somebody, sometimes I'd be sitting there just, you might think she's taking it all. And probably I'm just looking and I'm saying to myself, behind that cool, calm, placid, genteel facade is there has to be a level of steel to keep going, to succeed in a very, very, very competitive industry.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And longevity there's something.
And longevity, and you have both. You succeeded and you have longevity, and you can't have done that by being just say no one can being shrinking and being a shrinking violet. So to kind of say that, why am I doing this with the likes of Terry and Philip and Jimmy Smith and Patsy McLaughlin, and that is doing a huge injustice to you, Patricia, because I look at all of you, and I think, what the hell am I doing interviewing these people? They're so far, they've achieved so much more in Irish dancing, in competitions, in judging, or not in judging, but in teaching, than I have, or than I will ever. So I have the same hang-ups about interviewing you as you had, probably coming on here today. We're all very frail people behind it. I think creative people are cursed with, I suppose, doubts about their abilities.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I think that you might have something there. It's possible.
I think we always think. I think very few of us are so completely cocksure of ourselves, as they say. I think we all have our inabilities, or inadequacies, or our feelings of being that little bit lesser or unimportant compared to others.
I think also, though, when you've been around a long time, you do gain a little bit of a different kind of confidence. And I think, well, maybe I've always had it in the dancing too. Like someone said, I was dating someone in the class I was dating. Her children went to a different school, and then I was dating her brother. And she said to her teacher, oh, I had Patricia Kennelly over for dinner, and she's very quiet. She's very quiet, isn't she? And the teacher said, who did
Is that
you
the
have
same
over for
Patricia
dinner?
Kennelly?
And he said, well, that wouldn't be my experience, because, he knows me from meetings. At meetings, I'm very passionate about what I believe
Yeah.
in, and I will, state my case at a meeting, and I'm very confident. So I'm sure I come across different at a meeting or in that kind of setting than I would in my general life,
You're
which would
in
be more
you're
quiet.
in your comfort zone,
Yeah,
Irish
and I'm
dancing, and
passionate,
you're passionate about it.
very much so. And I've been around long enough to feel that, if something's going to change, there should be good reason for it, or if it needs to change, to want to see that go through. And I also believe very strongly in young people coming up and having their voice. I think our region has gone from being a few teachers when I first started, a handful,
Yeah,
to 158 or 188 or some,
really.
outrageous amount. Yeah. And, I think everybody should have a voice. Everyone should feel comfortable to speak, and everyone should be heard at a meeting so I kind of like Zoom for that too, because I thought that people might be a little bit more comfortable to speak in that kind of setting. It might be nice to have, going forward. I'm definitely going to use Zoom. I teach in very various locations, and I don't know if you know, but I don't drive. So
Don't you
everyone's
drive at all?
no.
I
So
don't
everyone
think
says,
I don't think I would drive if I was living in America.
I just
I think it looks
I
like a
never.
nightmare. Do you know, with
I
all
couldn't do it.
the lanes?
Oh, I just couldn't do it. I tried a couple of times, and it wasn't for me. I teach in a different state. I teach in Reno, Nevada, and I take this
The
bus and that
planes.
bus, and I take a train to get to one of my classes, and I leave my house at 10 o'clock in the morning. I don't get home sometimes till midnight because of
Oh.
transport, So I'm kind of used to coming and going and
And would
all
you
of that.
teach all day long now?
I would teach as long as the classes were there. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has mentioned this, but I do think even before the pandemic, there was a little bit of a decline in enrollment.
Yeah.
And so I'm quite concerned about this coming year. Normally we have new beginners coming in September. I don't see that happening, unless it's a sister or brother.
It's hard. It's hard to know. But I personally, I suppose I'm an optimist. I think that uh, Father or Michael today was saying to me that he has noticed that there's around 70 always inside in mass with him, and he said he's been doing mass via YouTube,
Yeah.
a YouTube mass, for especially for the elderly, because they're afraid to come out, and they're afraid to
Yes.
get on the buses, and they're afraid to go in and go to mass. But he said that I was asking him, did he think that the fact that people have always been able to pass a church, see the door open and say, oh, I'm not going in today, I'll go in tomorrow. But because the doors are now shut, do people feel a sense of, oh, I never thought I'd see the day that the church would be closed? And do they want to be in a church more now? Do they miss not being there because you never miss the water till the well runs dry, sort of a situation? And I think that maybe it might be the same for dancing, that once people get any notion of being able to go back, that within a month, 2 months, people will just go back to their normal selves again. I think
I
we'll
can't tell you the
automatically.
amount of parents that have written to me, phoned me, and said, thank you so much for keeping this going for my child. So parents are grateful. They're very grateful.
Yeah.
It's something their children can do outside of school work, and it gives them another focus, and it gives them
Yeah.
enjoyment, but it keeps them active and keeps their mind active,
But
and
it
they can.
also gives them a sense of continuity, a sense of
Yes.
the familiar. You
Yeah,
know, the
you
only
give
thing
them.
that's changed is my teacher is teaching me on Zoom and not teaching me inside in the classroom. But I'm getting a one-to-one with my teacher. That's probably the way they actually feel now, is that they have a
Yes,
one-to-one
they've
with you.
adapted very well. I mean, very well. And I find also, whenever I can, I say to them, you know, I'm going to leave the room. I'll give you your privacy. I'm going to leave the room and you signal when I come back and have a little social time together, girls and boys. Go ahead and talk to each other about anything you like. And I'll step out. And, one time I forgot about them. I was out talking to the gardener and I was doing this and doing that. It was quite a while. I was gone for probably at least an hour. And I came back in and they were still talking.
Isn't that lovely, though?
I know. I was so.
They're the things that people will remember about Patricia Kennelly, and they won't. When the COVID-19 has been a dim and distant, depressing memory, they'll remember Patricia Kennelly having the COVID-19 sessions inside in her house.
Yeah.
That's what you should call it, the COVID-19 sessions. And inside in her house where they all got to talk to each other. I mean, I even said it, I forget who I said it to, my colleague here in the radio station. Actually, rather than ringing people from now on, I said to him, you should actually Zoom me. At least you can see the person instead of having a phone up to your ear. It's just as easy to actually send them a code and say, I'm going to be on Zoom in 2 minutes. And
I mentioned about the dance camp, Mary. I was saying, and I'm going to do some different things because it's on Zoom. So, like, most of the children now wouldn't know the Irish national anthem.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make sure that's taught during that week. And
in English or in Irish?
I'm going to do it in English because I'd say that's the best place to start.
I think it should. Yeah, I find it's an anthem. I personally think our anthem should be a nation once again. That's I've always said it.
And I've always said I think ours should be America the Beautiful.
Yeah. I've always thought that
that
a nation once again should be our national anthem. I'm having my producer nodding over to me saying absolutely not. Typical Cork man. And nodding across to me, no, it shouldn't, but it should, because I don't think people from outside of Ireland singing our anthem are able to sing it in Irish.
Right.
Learn it. How could somebody like when
I want them to get the feel of it, and it's sang in English at the feshna that we go to. So I think I would like my dream is at the next fest to have my class get up and sing the Irish national anthem. The meeting I was telling you about on we have these meetings on Saturday.
I didn't know about those.
They're lovely. This woman, Deirdre O'Mara, she runs the meeting out of Yonkers, New York, and I've never met her before until I came on this meeting, and she's just been a wonderful lady, wonderful lady. I've also Frankie Kniff and his wife, Mary Moore, have been on this meeting with me every week. And Frankie said, would you like me to teach the room dance to your dancers during your camp? And I said, Frankie, I would love that. So, and then Maureen Hegarty offered to do a Shano step.
She's lovely, Maureen.
Oh, isn't she and so I didn't know Maureen before this, and so I feel like I've gotten to know some new people and some new friends in my life, and I'm very fond of these people, and I will always hold them dear now for going through this with me, this pandemic, this COVID-19,
Yeah, I think that was the idea. This started, this radio organically, because it started from me I used to have a show called Wild Geese that won an award, national award, but it was about immigration and emigration and the lives of the Irish leaving and going to another country, or vice versa, people coming to Ireland to make it their home. And so I interviewed Michael Dillon. And I really enjoy Michael Dillon. I just love Michael Dillon. He's just a fabulous guy, and kind, and I interviewed him, and then it kind of just progressed from there. And I just thought what I wanted it to do was to actually, I suppose, give people a sense of the Patricia Kennelly, for instance, behind the Irish dancing teacher that you'd see at a fesh, and that you'd say, oh, she's hugely successful, and but to see the human being behind the dancing teacher, do you know, and the
Yes.
judge and the success story, but and to see the humanity within all of us, but also to actually create a space where people can actually go in and listen to somebody else, their colleague's life, or and learn little bits
Oh,
from each other. And I
it's
think
fabulous,
everyone has,
Mary.
Danny, Jimmy, you, everyone has been able to. Mona is coming on with me.
Oh,
Um,
oh,
Gavin
she'll be great.
Doherty, both of them are coming on Monday.
Oh,
And
lovely.
do you know, and I hope that people will just approach me and say, Mary, I'll come on, or I'd like to come on, and because we can learn so much from each other by sitting down and just talking.
But also, even as teachers, if people get together instead of thinking of that person's my competition, but just everyone
Yeah,
come together, we have a common goal. And, you know, it really is, it's just Irish dancing. It's not religion. It's not, you know what I mean?
not
It's a
life.
child's
Well,
hobby.
it is life. It is life for some of
It's
us,
our
you know, but
lives.
it's our
It's a
lives. But
child's, it's a child's memory. And what I was going to say was, like, Michael Dillon and I became
started this radio program, you know, interviewing people started so
teach in the same
organically
city.
because
You know, we became friends. We became friends when I was going first to the world, and then we kind of rekindled our friendship because he had this dream that he wanted to do something for homeless children,
yeah,
and
he's such a
so
lovely guy.
he asked were there any
No
teachers that
idea.
would be interested, and I said, oh, I'm on board for that. I would love to participate in that. So we've raised about $20,000 so far, actually
Wow.
probably more at this point, um, for homeless children. And every year we're going to do a different charity, and we're going to have a fesh, and the proceeds will go to that charity. But we've been working together, and it's just so nice, so much to gain from working together rather than against. I
Oh
wish
God,
you
you know, I
get
said
that
that.
message out, you know?
I said that too. I forget who I said it to, that it's just, you know, I mean, together we can be just so, we can be a powerful organization and a powerful,
Yes,
unbeatable group of people. Because
yes,
when the chips are down, we are very competitive, and we've always been, because it's your nature, it's bred into you. No
yes.
matter how you try not to be competitive, everything I've ever done, I've had to do an exam at the end of it to prove to myself that I've actually learned it. Otherwise, I'd sit back and do nothing. Or I've had to enter a competition just to say, you know, that was my maybe it's come from being in competition, but I think we can learn. We you know, when the chips are down, the Irish dancing community has always been there at my lowest and at my best times in my life. And I, you know, and
Yes.
I think from these little interviews and things like that, I think we can create, I suppose, a sense of family beyond, you
Oh,
know, beyond
yes.
the dancing, you know, a
Oh, yes.
collegiality that probably will bring, hopefully will be there when COVID ends. That
Oh, I'm
people will
sure it
look at
will.
each other at a fesh and say, and look at each other as a friend. Yes, we're going to be everyone's going to be competitive again. Of course they are. That's nature. But that we'll have a better idea of who that person is, who the Patricia Kennelly is, who Mary Honan is. Do you know? Because I don't know if a lot
Yes.
of people knew me really or anything. Do you know? But do you know? You know, we are much more than just dancing teachers.
Oh, of course. Yes.
You know, and
Yes. And the dancing has made us who we are, and we have made the dancing because
who
of
it
who we
is.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it goes around and back and forth. But certainly, all the people you interviewed and all the people I think you have yet to come, that common bond is that we are passionate and we love what we do. And I think that's a great thing to have. A lot of people don't have that.
No, and on that point, Patricia, I think that's the perfect. That's couldn't get a better ending than that. We do. We are Irish dancing. Irish dancing is us.
That's right. That's right, Mary. I can't thank you enough. I'm very honored to have been
My
asked.
absolute and utter pleasure to have had you on, Patricia.
Thank you.
Patricia
Thank you
Kennelly
so
from
much.
San Francisco via New York,
And
via
Sacramento
Ireland,
now, Mary. I'm in Sacramento
Sacramento,
now. Yeah, I'm in the capital.
capital,
Yeah,
Sacramento. Yeah, I get there someday. But
you will. We'll make sure you do, Mary.
thank you, Patricia. Thank you. But Slán leat and Gaurav Mila Mahagut.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
very much.
Thank you again.
God bless. That's right.